Now, there's a connection to the Alec Baldwin shooting incident here. Shortly after that happened, and it was blaring across all the headlines, J.D. Vance tweeted a cruel and callous joke about the incident. It was appalling. In fact, so appalling, we don't need to show it to you. Remember what the Trump administration said about its policy of separating migrant children from their parents, that the cruelty is the point? Well, the past few days, we've seen more example of how cruelty has become the new brand for the GOP. And our colleague, Chris Hayes, had this take on his show on Friday.
I mean, this is just an unfathomably terrible situation. And of course, look, humans often deal with terrible things with dark humor, part of our coping mechanisms, but J.D. Vance is running for office. He wants to represent millions of Ohioans. He wants to be in the United States Senate. And the first thing he does, reading this news, like there's a woman who's dead, family's grieving, her children, everyone around her is grieving. And this awful thing happens, and I want to write a gloating joke about it on Twitter. Like, won't that be funny? Won't that trigger people? It's a shtick, of course. It's a shtick. I know. It's meant to trigger people like me. But it's a weird thing when you think about it. He's not a morning shock going out of his way to trigger people, performing being a bad person, whether he really is or not, because he thinks there's an appetite for it politically. He's a guy running for Senate, and of course he's right. He's correct. There is an appetite. People want it. That's what Donald Trump proved. And it's not just coming from J.D. Vance. Again, he's doing a very pathetic shtick that's very transparent and almost hard to watch. But it's become a broader ethos on the right. I've been noticing it and thinking about it. Like conservatives, they have this term they like to throw at liberals, virtue signaling. And that's what they say liberals are doing when liberals express concern about things like equality or social justice. And to conservatives, and I think a lot of them really believe this, that it's not real, those concerns with equity or social justice. It's a kind of performative etiquette. And again, that's not a crazy critique. I think sometimes it is true that people are virtue signaling. But I have come to think of what those on the right, like J.D. Vance, are doing now as vice signaling. Look at me. I'm a loud, ostentatious jerk. But that is increasingly what it means to be a right-wing politician in America these days, which again is weird. It's perverse.
It is so strange. I grew up in the party of Ronald Reagan. We knew it was drilled into our head. Be conservative ideologically, be moderate temperamentally. People like Jeb Bush, Jeb had mastered this. Tim, let me go back to you, and then we'll take it around the table. It's so shocking. I was talking to a conservative with whom I have huge disagreements over. One of them has to do with the current leader of Hungary, but we were friends before. We are friends now, and we talked through things last night. The one thing that he said is, I just don't understand why so many on my side feel the need to be hateful, to purposefully be jerks, to purposefully not try to convert other people to our cause. And that's what I don't understand. You look at J.D. Vance, it's so cynical, it's so hateful. And this is a guy who was an anti-Trump conservative who actually in 2016 said that people would be looking at Republicans' un-Christ-like behavior. Their un-Christ-like behavior, their hatefulness, and that they needed to be better than that. And what we've seen from him over the past couple of years has been really just a reduction to the lowest common denominator. And here's a guy who, before he decided to play this cynical short game, I would say probably had one of the best brands politically you could imagine, whether people were conservative or liberal or moderate, old or young. I mean, Mika will tell you, our daughters all read Hillbilly Elegy, all just thought the world of the book and the author. This is such a bizarre thing to do for him. I just don't understand it.
Well, I understand it, Joe. He's doing it for the applause. for the cheers. Look, I think that these politicians, you go to these Trump rallies, and you know this. Look, I love Jeb and I love Mitt and the good old days of the party, but you go to those rallies, and they were pretty staid affairs. People weren't throwing their underwear on stage exactly. It wasn't a rock show, right? And they go to these Trump rallies, and it is a madhouse. And they're getting the cheers. They're seeing what the crowd wants, and they think that this, down market Trump shtick is how they can get that kind of applause, right? And J.D. Vance has basically admitted it himself. Yeah, he said that he goes to Trump rallies because this is what the people want, and this is what the voters that he's trying to talk to want. So he's got to go along with it. So he has done all of the things that he warned about the crassening of the party and the increasing cruelty and the unchristian behavior of the party. All the stuff that he warned Trump would bring in 2016, he's become himself in 2020, and he doesn't care because he cares more about winning this primary and doing it the old way of being really conservative in policy and moderate temperamentally. Isn't doing it. It isn't good enough anymore. It doesn't work. That's not what the voters want.
And Philip Bump, while it took many to actually see the cruelty of Donald Trump, whether it be from face shaming to blatant racism and cruelty, it's now it appears to be like we're as if many are immune to it. Until someone like J.D. Vance tweets what he did, and it kind of stops you, and you realize there's a whole new generation of this happening.
Yeah. I mean, that's really an interesting question, is how much of this gets inculcated in the Republican Party moving forward. So even if there are leaders who are, find this, abhorrent, to what extent is this sort of the new expectation? And I think the really important thing to remember here is what happens downstream of this. Like all of this fury and the violent threats that are being made against school board members, that is a function of seeing these people as something who are themselves bad and evil and people who are working against the interests of the United States, because all of this is amplified, because this level of vitriol is so amplified against political opponents. It goes all the way down the line in American politics. And so we see these incidents where something, as mundane as being your school board member from some random county in Wisconsin all of a sudden becomes this thing where you are a target of hate, because that is the expectation that's been set all the way down the line in how you deal with people who you disagree with politically.
And Eugene Daniels, though, this just shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't have been hard from the very beginning. I mean, I remember, I think it was December the 3rd, 2015, Donald Trump talked about a Muslim registry, that he was going to propose that the United States had a Muslim registry, that all people who worshiped and were members of the Islamic faith would have to register with the government. And, I said at the time, I said, this is Germany in 1933, Germany in 1934, what they did with Jews. This is very clear. This guy can never be elected. He can't be president of the United States. It was so elemental to me, and it would have been so elemental to everyone I served with from 1995 to 2001. Every one of those people in that time would have said, okay, he sounds like Hitler. We can't let him run our party. And yet here we are in 2016, and the more outrageous he got, the more people jumped on board, and it even continued after January the 6th.
Continues today.
Continues today, exactly. I mean, Maya Angelou said, when someone tells you who they are, shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And I think something that Republicans did as soon as Donald Trump came down that escalator is try to explain away the actions, the things that he said, and you see where that went, right? Because you're following him, even while you're saying, don't take him seriously, or take him literally and seriously, whatever the adage was at the time. And what we realized is that he meant what he said, in the things that he was saying they were going down, and for 4 or 5 years, the people who supported him, they heard those things, and then on January 6th, they took action, right? Donald Trump has said, I didn't tell anybody to do that, but for months and months and months, really years, since Ted Cruz beat him in the Iowa caucus, he said anytime that he didn't win the way he wanted to win, that the election was stolen. And so you stoke this for years. You say all these other types of things that we've been talking about for years from Donald Trump. And that's what the party is right now. So J.D. Vance and a lot of these other Republicans that are in Congress, they're going to continue to emulate that because they're trying to out-Trump Trump, something that
he has proven over and over again you can't do, right? And that was what we saw in the 2016 primary. And if he runs in 2024, and if he doesn't, you'll see a bunch of other people trying to out-Trump Trump. And the party will have to decide then if that's the kind of party they want to be. At this point, that's what they want to be, the party of Trump.
It's working for them.